Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. We are your hosts, Marlena, Sherry, and Matthew. We are therapists and coaches, and we want to share our own stories with you, as well as the wisdom, insights, and tips we've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in to this episode.
Welcome to another episode of Happy in the Mess. This one looks a little different for those of you joining us by YouTube. We are actually all here in person with each other for the first time since we started this and since we started meeting together 2 years ago. And it's been just a fun weekend. We all got together in Cincinnati, which is, you can see the skyline a little bit in our background here. But it's been a lot of fun being able to just get to meet face to face, talk to each other. So it does look a little different. It may sound a little bit different because we had to just completely change our whole setup today. So bear with us. If you don't like it, we'll be back to our normal Zoomy square selves in a couple weeks here. So for now, really, like one of the things I really started talking about or thinking about as we were going through our whole what do we talk about today is noticing the difference that happens when you travel. And this one's hard for me. I was glad to take the lead on it because I am the basement dwelling gremlin for most of my life. My family even they refer to me as the basement hobbit because it's like that's just where I am, and I'm not a huge traveler, but thankfully the two of you have really encouraged getting out there. So I guess maybe just starting, what are some of the benefits we notice when we get out of our mess and just away from everything?
I love this question, and it has been so fun traveling here, and I so appreciate it, just so everyone knows, this was actually seamlessly coordinated, and thank you, Matthew, for planning our trip, because Matthew's our Ohio resident here. But for me, it's like I get to forget about work entirely. I know that this is kind of a work trip in a sense, but for me, I get to because it's a new routine, new people, new places, even sometimes like new accents and some even new language, right? Even if it's within the United States, like that allows me to forget my normal stressors in life, and that is a huge sense of relief. I have felt so relaxed and slept so hard just being in a new place. I know that's not true for everybody, but it's often true for me.
Yeah. Well, I love to travel because I usually do it by car. I usually don't go by plane, and I get to be in this little space that's all mine, and I control what I listen to, and I can stop when I want to. And I had some great time just absorbing a new book that I'm reading, and it was a workbook. I have to admit, I was listening to coaching sessions and listening to a book, and kind of letting my brain just relax and take in ideas in a new way. So the traveling part itself is always something that I very much look forward to. The being away, it's always good to be in a different space and kind of have to adapt to it. And even if it's not great, even if I go someplace and the space itself doesn't feel very good, then going back home is like such a treat. Like I'm going to be so happy to be back in my bed. It's like my favorite place in the whole world, and I'll appreciate it all the more because I'll have been away from it.
Absolutely. So a little there and back again. Like it's been a tough trip, and we're home and we're loving it and enjoying it.
But not this trip. This has not been a tough trip.
It's good. It's good. So yeah, and it's been fun for me. It's been same thing. I get out of it, and Sherry, I know a lot of people might hear workbook and like, oh, you're not supposed to do work, but I heard a great podcast on the life of a therapist, kind of behind the scenes. Oh wait, that was ours. So go back and listen to that one. But that's our life. Like we're business people. We're entrepreneurs. We care about our clients, so we're always trying to make things better. And being out of our space is a great way to even just kind of maybe reestablish our practices and what we really want and what's important to us.
Helps us put the pieces together in a different way. Mm-hmm. Even if they're the same pieces, being able to like assemble them into a different picture, that it's like unlocks your brain from being fixated on it going together that one way.
Absolutely.
Well, and as you all know, like I really like a neuroscientific approach to my counseling and coaching. And I've read some really interesting research that travel rewires your brain. And so it really does create new neural pathways because you're out of your routine. So your brain is sort of forced into thinking about the details, like where is this and where is that, and what do I need to do to get food, to move here, to move there, to talk to these people. And so that whole, like, because our brain is disrupted from its routine, it's firing off in a new way. And this can actually help us have a different perspective. It actually changes some interesting research I just read this morning. The Big Five, the Big Five personality traits, it changes openness to new experiences. And I thought those were pretty consistent over your lifetime, but they can be altered, and travel helps you alter your basic core traits, which I think is fascinating.
It also helps you develop habits. When you're at home and you're always you're in your space, so there's so many reinforcers of those habits. So when you step out of that, often a lot of people will be more active or eat differently or do different things with their time. And so it's that break that allows you to go back into your everyday life and say, okay, I really liked getting that extra exercise or having that time when I could just relax. And so now I'm going to bring that back into my everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the perspective change, I just wanted to go back to that really quick. That actually helps us become better counselors and coaches as well because of that. It's important to know what our clients are experiencing. And so I think it increases empathy too when we get kind of exposed to new ideas, new places, new people, new culture. I think even when you do that in the United States, it's especially true, I think, when we go abroad. Some of the articles I was reading really highlighted that going abroad really can alter personality traits and just the brain in general. It actually helps with cognitive flexibility when we have to start using another language. Which is, of course, prevents cognitive decay over time, which is so important. And as my friend says, like, travel is the best education, truly.
I love it. Absolutely. I think back to, we did some overseas travels when we were younger, and, that being in a different culture, seeing Americans through a different lens was very eye-opening.
Oh, yeah.
And it, as for us, it was like, that's not our value. That's not the way we want to come across. So it really gave us a chance perspective, right? It gave us some distancing to say, I don't want to show these particular values. So therefore we change it.
Oh, I love that, Matthew. Thank you for sharing that, because that is so true. Like, to see ourselves through the eyes of others is so eye-opening and enlightening, and does help us alter our behavior to just become more kind and considerate. It's so important.
Absolutely.
Even my spiritual beliefs have changed as a result of travel abroad. When I've been exposed to other people and the way they practice their spirituality, I've actually gotten so much at meditation and prayer techniques coming from other cultures. It's been tremendous for my own growth, just spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we were in Finland, and they had they were sharing that there's all these beautiful churches there, these amazing pieces of architecture, and our guide was telling us that people don't actually go to the churches to practice their spirituality. They go out into the woods and away from people, and when I heard that, it was one of those switches. It was like, wait, I can do that? That's an option?
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does. It gives us a chance to change so many things.
What I loved when I was in kind of similar to your experience, when I was in Tanzania for about 6 months, and about 40% of their population is Muslim. And when that call to prayer comes, wherever you are, you get on your mat and you pray towards Mecca. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And I thought, I can interrupt my day to pray anywhere I'm at. I don't have to be in a particular place, in a sacred place. Like, it's sacred because I'm doing it, period.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. My next thought is, as we're talking about these incredible benefits, I know that not everybody has some don't have the ability to travel, and that this can be a challenge. But I think there's also some obstacles that come in the way. And so I kind of want to spitball here. What are some of the obstacles that people have that you really hear that, obstacles to getting out of all of this, getting into new worlds, getting into new experiences?
You mean money and time?
Money and time, always a big one.
Yeah. Truly, and some people, and I want to kind of put that myth to rest a little bit, because depending on, there are ways to travel on a budget. I'm really great at that. Put a comment in our comment section if you need some tips on how to travel on a budget. I'm a pro at traveling on a budget. But I think too, diet. diet is so hard for folks, either because they're not used to the food, not sure they're going to like it, or they have dietary restrictions like allergies or preferences, like if they're vegetarian and going to a very, Argentina, big meat eating country, what do you do? And that becomes a huge challenge, especially if you're intending to stay with locals. How do you be there and not offend everyone by your dietary restrictions and still enjoy the culture and get your needs met?
Yeah.
That can be, do your research ahead of time,
Yeah. I know that's something that you have to pay attention to. My daughter, it's really hard for her to travel. It's really hard for her to trust new food sources in general. So definitely food is a really big thing. I think also it feels uncomfortable to be out of your comfort zone. And so there's that tendency to say, well, I'm not going to go there. That might be too different. Or that would make me feel like I'm not safe, or I'm not comfortable, or I'm not okay. So picking places, well, you can travel to places where you do feel comfortable, but also understanding that if being out of that comfort zone has all of the benefits that we've been talking about.
That is when your brain gets rewired. And I will say too that being out of your comfort zone again makes you more flexible. And I used to say when I was in my 20s, like I would never commit to someone unless we traveled abroad together, so I could see how that worked. Because I wanted to know, like, when it gets tough, and it does, especially when you go abroad, you're going to run into, it's never a smooth, as much as you plan, there's always going to be a hiccup. And if we can't handle that together well as a couple, this may not work in long-term marriage. Yeah. So anyway, I still sort of hold that as a thing that I'm looking for, like the flexibility. It's important to me. And yeah.
And builds empathy.
Yeah.
You get to know people in a different way, and so you can understand where they're coming from and why they might think the way they do.
Ooh, and you get to know yourself in a new way.
Yes.
I love that. I have discovered so much about myself in traveling to other places. Mm-hmm. Like, not only how other people perceive me, but like other things that come alive in a new geography and a new culture. I'm like, wow, I'm really outgoing in this place. Or, and places have vibes, I think, like locations feel a certain way. And so I get to discover two new things that I like that I didn't even know about.
That's awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's different. There are challenges, right? I mean, there are time constraints that we all have because many of us work and have families and things like that. We have budget constraints because unless anybody's really independently wealthy and wants to fund a podcast, then it's very, it can be challenging. Marlene, I appreciate it, right? Like, there's budget ways to do things. Mm-hmm. No doubt. Traveling with celiac is always, that's I think for me, that tends to be one of my big reasons to not travel. Mm-hmm. But we develop resources on how to handle these things. I mean, one of the things is, we always make sure that we have a kitchen handy because I can cook anything if I have the right space to do it. And then sometimes that's just a microwave, but I can make do. Crowdsourcing, for me, one of the things is, I'll use a particular app that allows us to really kind of look out for each other. So
would you share that app? For our audience?
For the appropriate amount of money? No. This is terrible. I am all about the promos this time. No, I use Find Me GF, Find Me Gluten Free, which is a fantastic crowdsourced app. And there's different degrees. And with celiacs, we have some people who can tolerate a little bit. And then we have some people who no. Like my son jokes around that my biggest fear in the world is a breadcrumb. Because a breadcrumb in the wrong place is going to ruin 3 days of my trip. But in this app, the people can respond. So if a place says they're gluten free, but they don't take the proper precautions, it will show up there, and it's like, no, we don't want to go there. So
is that app available in international locations?
That is a fantastic question. I'm glad you asked that.
Okay. Well, more shall be. If you all know that app can be used abroad, do let us know and let everyone else know.
I do not know. I have not had to use it abroad. Mm-hmm. I have not traveled abroad since those things. So, but.
I also just want to say another little benefit, and I know people really struggle with asking for help, but when you're abroad in particular, and even when you're in the United States, like, you end up having to ask for help. You have to ask for directions, where to find something, what's good, what's not. And I feel like those little interactions with strangers helps develop our social skills, and it's a sign of strength, really, when we start asking for help, and connects us in ways to new people, and having like makes us more confident when we get home. Like that, actually, I've noticed happiness and confidence continue after the trip is over. In fact, the anticipation of a trip helps us feel better and more joyful. But actually, a month after the trip, we continue to experience the benefits of the trip. So, I mean, if you needed another reason to travel, science gives you a lot.
Yeah, that also can be a barrier, though, because, you know, having to put yourself into that situation and you don't know where you're going, and if you're uncomfortable asking directions or having to figure it out as you go, I think that there's a tendency to be like, okay, that's too much, that's too big. I'm going to stay someplace that's more in my comfort zone.
Yeah. And one more plug, creativity. Creativity increases when you get to a new experience, new culture, new place. I was reading some research that artists who traveled abroad more got more recognition prizes, or their stuff was more prized because they had more creativity and flair in whatever they were creating, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah.
One of my favorite artists goes to different places, and she'll take a lot of photographs, and then she goes back to her studio and does her paintings. That's Cedar Lee, Art by Cedar, if that's she ever is paying attention to this.
Oh, lovely. That's lovely. But no, the barriers are real. I mean, I'm quick to harp on all the benefits, but the barriers of time, money, food, and discomfort. I mean, just the regular discomfort. What am I going to do? And then there's some crime is a barrier sometimes, you know, or the anticipation of such things, or illnesses, you know, that are still rampant in some places, like malaria or what have you.
Planning also can be a problem. In this day and age, we can check almost anything on the internet. But my daughter just went to Italy, and they found a hotel and were able to pay for it ahead of time. And then they got there, and there were all these problems, and it wasn't what they expected it to be. And so, like, there's a lot of those kind of things where you can plan and you can think you have all of your ducks in a row, and then you get there and it just isn't what you expect. Now, that goes to your kind of rolling with it and being more flexible, but that can also be a real barrier for people who kind of dread that decide in the moment sort of thing.
Very true. I have found it never goes as planned. Even when you do all of your research, like I said before, it never goes as planned. And so just anticipate that, and also be willing to change plans in the middle of your trip. I have found that I have made plans I went to some very different coastal places along the Pacific coast of Mexico. And I realized in one of those places I felt extremely unsafe. I could just feel it. I had that spidey sense, and I thought, this is not a safe, I don't feel safe here. And I begged the hostel owner to let me out of my reservation. I ended up paying like half the fee. I was like, I have to get out of here. Like, it's not okay. And then I loved this other place and canceled the rest of my plans so I could just stay in this other coastal town. Like, and it was not what I expected it was going to be, but it ended up being a much better trip when I followed my instincts.
It's good wisdom there, and I think that probably comes from traveling. You've learned, and as we start to trust our own instincts, which may be part of this too, is can people, you know, maybe the goal isn't to. I mean, some people do. Some people are like, I just want to go out as far as I can, take as many risks as possible, and other people who are more risk adverse might be like, I'm going to try traveling across my city first, you know, or across my state, or whatever it may be, and build up to that. But we learn resiliency, we learn creativity, hopefully some confidence in all of this too. And
to trust ourselves and discern who else might be trustworthy. I think really tapping into your spidey sense, I do that a lot when I'm traveling. I feel very connected to my instincts, like this is okay, this isn't. Which has also helped because I'm sober and able to. I have to say I did not make the best decisions when I was drinking abroad heavily. That did not work out well. But I'm here.
So is there any way to get the same benefits while not, like how far do you have to go from home to get these benefits?
Well, I've heard that new neural pathways can develop even when you do simple things like changing your route to work, actually brushing your teeth with the other hand. Like, ooh. I mean, like, I don't know if I can do that. like simply changing it up, even in little ways, you can start to see benefits. Going to a different neighborhood, going across your city, like literally planning something different, changing the routine can all start to create new things for you. When we alter your routine, I hear that you can start to alter your reality. You know, y'all, I'm into law of attraction, manifestation stuff, and I've heard that that is very helpful to bring in new experiences for yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, it's interesting because within the highly sensitive community, there's a subgrouping of that called the high sensation seeking, the HSS, where exactly right, where people who want to go out and travel. And it was interesting because when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's me. But then it's not me because I don't like to leave my house. But I was like, but it feels like me. And so I created my own because why not? I can do this. But for me, I'm much more the intellectual sensation seeking, and I always want to learn new stuff. And so, Sherry, maybe that's the long answer to your question there. Is I think a lot of times learning new skills, learning new hobbies, visiting places mentally, reading books, like those can all be great ways to get that flexibility.
I love that.
I will say though, like even that's still nice to get out and travel a little bit. It's physically move within that. So,
yeah, your brain has to adapt to seeing something new. So like really changing scenery and geography. I used to like test myself in cities after a while and turn off my GPS. Be like, we're gonna do this, and I'm not turning it on. I'm just gonna see, and I would have to wander my way through. I was very aware of my environment. I was no longer just kind of like, you know, when you start driving the same route over and over, your brain kind of shuts off. So like my brain really had to work hard. It was very uncomfortable. I tell you, I got lost multiple times in cities like Austin and Denver, and I was like, nope, not using the GPS.
This sounds like my childhood. I mean, there was a long period of time when if I was traveling somewhere, I would pull out the map. I remember my dad with his highlighter, and he'd be like, here's how you want to go. And, and you figure it out as you go. So in this day and age of GPS, I do think it's easy to kind of like zone out all that stuff. My daughter didn't have data when she was in Italy, and so she had to figure it out. And so she's, of course, sending us these messages that she was lost in Rome a couple of times. And I think my husband was like, she needs data. And I'm like, she can figure this out. Like we used to just do that.
Yeah, I remember being in Italy and having a paper map and stopping and being like, where am I? And the GPS didn't figure it out for me because I didn't have data either. I didn't have a phone. And you can download now your maps on your phone before you go and like use your digital map. But it does. It makes the brain work so much harder. And I was a geography major. And so that like turned on that part of me that I've shut off because GPS talks to me and tells me where to go all the time. So maybe just like driving in your own city without your GPS and get lost on purpose.
Right? An inexpensive way to travel and a great way to get some of those same benefits. I like that idea.
Well, even a staycation where you intentionally go to places you normally wouldn't go, that starts to stimulate some of this.
My wife and I, she grew up in a small town, central Ohio or southeastern Ohio, and her mother still lives there. We visit there, but when we did our staycation, we intentionally picked a few new places around there. We found there's some incredible gluten-free restaurants there, and like it was a whole new experience. Like I kind of like this place. Like we need to start going. And this was 20 minutes from our house. So
amazing. Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. Well, anything else? Anything that we want to just kind of wrap up with as far as maybe encouragement for our audience to travel, or anything that you might think we might have missed as we were talking about the benefits of travel?
I think one of the things I'd like to challenge listeners to do is that if you feel that pushback that I can't go somewhere or I can't get time, like that you would really push back against that and figure out a way maybe to do it in a scaled back way or a different way, but that you would allow yourself that time and really challenge yourself to step outside of that comfort zone.
Thank you, Sherry, for that. And I would say go with the flow. I would say expect the unexpected when you travel. Don't expect it to go as planned. It will never do that. And enjoy that. Enjoy the surprise of that and the fact that you may have to rough it for a little bit or figure it out, and just know that you're giving your brain a great workout, and you'll have a great story when you come home, because the perfect trips aren't the memorable ones. So
it's very true. You make good memories you make memories out of some good, some bad. Exactly. Out of these experiences, and if all else fails, it makes us much more grateful for our time home and our time with our loved ones that way. So,
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, I've appreciated seeing all of you and being able to do this recording live and well, we always do it live, but doing it with each other and in person. It's been a lot of fun. So definitely, we encourage you, get out there, travel, have fun, get away from your mess for a little bit. It will be there when you get back. And in the meanwhile, you may learn some new stuff along the way. So if you want to reach out to us individually, catch some of our stories or work with us, Marlena, you are
At CoachMarlena.com, and you can find that link in the show notes.
Sherry.
I'm at sherrytimco.com, or you can hang out with me in the Date Night community and Facebook.
Absolutely. I'm Matthew, and I'm at MatthewEMorgan.com, where you can check me out at the Misfit Refuge. Take care, and thank you for joining us today.